if one of my values, say, is creativity, right? I might go, creativity is really important to me, but actually I'm not spending any time in my week doing anything creative. I spend hours a day scrolling social media, but I don't spend any hours a day doing anything creative. So I've got this mismatch between what dopamine's driving me to do and what my values are telling me to do. When I reduce the scrolling, I'm going to make the conscious decision to pick some things that align with that creative value and do those.
Welcome back to On the Couch with Claire. My name is Clare Rowe. I am a child and family psychologist. And today, if you have ever found yourself down the black hole of doom scrolling on endless Instagram reels, thinking just one more, and boom, it's an hour later, that is me, you are listening to the right episode today. Because today on the couch, I am joined by someone who knows exactly why you can't stop scrolling your phone and why your brain loves it that way. Dr Anastasia Hronis is a clinical psychologist, a researcher, and she's the author of a bloody brilliant book. It's called The Dopamine Brain, which does a bit of a deep dive on the science of why we chase that instant gratification. And I want to know today from her, are our modern lives actually rewiring our brains? And why am I wasting hours procrastinating on my damn phone? There are actually a lot of cat videos, no lie, on my phone because I have a cat. So the algorithm there is feeding me. And what can we actually do about it, if any? So we're going to talk all things today, dopamine addiction. You've probably heard of the word dopamine and you probably know it as some type of chemical in the brain that the brain makes when we do something that we like. That might be the extent of it. So for me personally too, I want to know about that weird zombie state you slip into because I'm like that. I'm resting on the couch, but it actually feels just a little bit more like I'm paralyzed and literally can't move. So I want to ask if that's all connected as well. So I am going there today with Dr. Hronis, who is here to decode the brain science in plain English and help us all get a little bit more in control of our habits. So let's dive into it. Dr. Anastasia Hronis, welcome to On the Couch with Claire.
Thank you for having me.
You and I have known each other for a while.
Quite a few years.
We have. You did used to work with me, or we used to work together in a clinic, and now you've gone on to do some wonderful things, and the latest of them being this book. And I love it because it's very plain English, it's easy to read, but it is a whole book on dopamine. So I guess my first question for everyone listening out there, what is dopamine and why did you dedicate a whole book to one brain chemical?
Who would have thought you could write a whole book on dopamine?
Yeah, exactly. It's a great book, but yeah, why just this one chemical?
Yes. So dopamine's been topical lately. I think it's sort of having its moments on social media. We've seen some social media trends about dopamine detoxes, and I learned about anti-dopamine parenting as one that came up. So dopamine's kind of in the spotlight at the moment. And I think that's because a lot of people are trying to understand how their brain influences their behavior and how they can try and change certain habits. So dopamine is a neurotransmitter, which means it's a chemical messenger and it facilitates messages between the brain and the central nervous system. And it does a whole lot of different things. So dopamine regulates our movements. Dopamine helps us store and encode memories. Dopamine even helps regulate our kidney function. So it does lots of different things. Yeah.
It's not just this pleasure chemical people know it as.
Yes.
Okay.
But that's the thing it's most known for.
Right.
It's known for the experience of pleasure that we get. And it does two important things. Yes, it kind of activates this feeling of pleasure when we do something that we enjoy, but it also drives us to seek out that pleasurable thing again and again and again.
Let's put that into a practical example for someone. They're seeking something out. What would that be? And it drives them again to do it.
Yeah. I often use this example of I love donuts, right? So downstairs where I work, there's like a cafe.
Like what are we talking? Like Krispy Kremes? Or are we talking like
a nice
better,
cinnamon?
proper?
Yeah.
Like I like the hot cinnamon. The warm cinnamon.
Crunchy on the outside, soft and fluffy inside.
Melts.
Yep, exactly. So one of those donuts. If you can imagine,
Is my dopamine firing like right now? Yeah.
Exactly.
Cool.
So you go, you eat a donut and you go, oh my God, this tastes delicious. I love it so much. Dopamine is activated. But then tomorrow when I'm sitting in my office and it's like 3 o'clock in the afternoon and I'm like, you know, it'd be really good right now, a donut. Dopamine is already activated in my brain and it's motivating me to get up out of my chair, go downstairs, go into the cafe, buy that donut and eat it.
Okay. So before you've done it now.
Exactly. It drives me. It motivates me to seek it out again and again. And yes, it gives me that feeling of pleasure, but also that pleasure is very short-lived, right? Like when I'm eating that donut, first bite, fabulous. Second bite, great. Third bite, good. But then after a few bites, I'm probably thinking about the next thing.
Wow. Okay. And I'm just thinking about that in relation to food of like massive serving sizes. Like when you're craving something, you could actually just satisfy that craving with a quarter of the portion maybe.
Yes, absolutely.
Anyway,
absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's because like from an evolutionary perspective, dopamine existed because we needed to survive, right? And survival was much harder. So we had to like hunt for food and forage for berries. And that was a hard process, but we got that reward at the end of it when we ate food. Same with sex and procreation. Sex was enjoyable and pleasurable because we needed to procreate for survival of the species. But some of these things were harder to achieve than they are nowadays. We can get dopamine activated in all sorts of quick and easy ways with today's technology.
Okay. So I want to go straight into phone use because that's the one I'm like struggling with. I'm very quick to give recommendations to families for kids, but I'm also kind of very conscious of looking at my own phone use, particularly as a parent myself. But okay, if we're looking at this thing now that everybody has in their pocket, what is happening to our dopamine systems when we are going to it? And everyone he knows, you literally, it's not even waiting in a lift or on a train or waiting. It's while people are walking now, right? It's not even like I'm literally walking down, street in Sydney now, and it's people are on their phones. People can't seem to pause, certainly, without reaching for this thing in their pocket. What is happening in the dopamine system that's driving us to use these and scroll? We're not even looking for something. We're just like opening the fridge, mindlessly seeing what's there. What's happening?
Yes, it's that waiting for something interesting or exciting, right? The brain likes things that are new and novel and exciting. It likes the anticipation. That's really what we're kind of feeding into. It's the anticipation of when I open Instagram or TikTok or whatever it is, what I might find or what I might see. It's the curiosity, and dopamine is activated when we are driven to open those apps and look for something, and also when I find it. I'm sure if I sit on Instagram for long enough, I'm going to find some video that's moderately amusing or funny or interesting or pleasurable in some way. It will come, but I don't know when, I don't know how, I don't know what it'll be. And there's that element of surprise that my brain likes.
And that would feed into what you and I would know as that intermittent reward, right? So for everyone else, that means we could look at our phones 3 times and on the 4th time we get something, or on the 6th time or on the 2nd time, we don't know when it's coming of, oh, someone liked my post. I could check 5 times, nothing. And then it comes. And so I keep chasing it. I think you've described it like that, like dopamine chasing.
Exactly. And the apps know this, the people who make the apps.
Yeah.
So it's not the phone itself, right? It's the apps that we use.
Yeah.
They know what the brain likes and what's rewarding to the brain, and they really fuel and tap into that.
Yeah.
There's been word on the street, not entirely confirmed, is that Instagram will do things like if you post, it will actually withhold showing you the likes and wait to keep you going back and checking for more. And then it will like release them as a big burst. So you're like, oh, lots of people now liking my post. So you get really excited rather than the gradual drip that you might otherwise get.
Well, that makes sense. And gosh, like I say this all the time, particularly when I'm talking to parents about screen usage with kids. But, you've got to understand, and I think people do, but they don't think about it like this. There are the whole of Silicon Valley set up with billions of dollars put into employees whose only KPI, their only job is to tweak a color or tweak something on the platform with the only outcome of having you stay on the platform longer because your attention is what they're after.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. If I can give you an example of that, I was reading some of the things that streaming services like Netflix did, right? So back in the day, you used to have to kind of your episode would finish, you have to go back to the main menu, click the next one to keep watching. Now, all this sort of provides circuit breakers. So now we have that countdown bar that says next episode starting in however long.
Yes.
So they did research on how long that countdown timer should be. And they originally set it for 10 seconds. They found that 10 seconds was the perfect amount of time for people to stay on, anticipate the next episode, and then keep watching. Now, they continue to do research with everyone's data, right? Because we're all watching. And they found that 10 seconds after a while became too predictable for people. They knew how it worked. So they actually shortened it now to 5 seconds.
I would switch on after 8 or 9, like 10's like, too long to think about it. And
yes.
Yeah.
Yep. So now they've shortened it to 5 seconds. But it's a beautiful example of how, like, it's literally a difference of 5 seconds, but they are using our data to figure out what is that sweet spot.
Okay, so when I'm there, and this is pretty shameful to admit, but here we go, oversharing. When I'm lying in bed, and you shouldn't be on your phone in bed, and I'm scrolling, I have had the phenomenon or the feeling, like, put the phone down and I can't. That's a scary feeling because I don't feel in control. Yeah. So where is the line in this dopamine chasing between habit and addiction? Because I know that you're very experienced in addictions, and when people think about addiction, they think about gambling and alcohol and other substances, and they go, oh, this isn't an addiction. Is it an addiction or is it a bad habit?
Yeah, it's a good question.
Where's the line?
Yeah.
From a clinical point of view, where's the line?
I often talk to people about how much is this behavior, this habit, how much of a negative impact is it having in your life, right? I too am a nighttime scroller. I scroll before I go to sleep. And sometimes I've had the moment where I'm like watching reels and my eyes are closing and I'm like, oh, wake up and keep watching, right? And it probably delays me going to bed for 5 minutes and I don't have any sleep problems. So I'm really lucky. Now, it's not ideal, but it's not really causing any problems in my life. I feel okay being able to kind of have that pattern. But if it meant that I was staying up maybe half an hour longer than I should, or if it meant that my sleep was really disrupted, then we'd go, that's a problem. So let's look at changing something. I'm a big believer of something's only a problem if it's a problem.
Yes,
and
I say that all the time.
Yeah, and that's when we kind of move into that like addiction realm.
Yeah. And you know, there might be other subtle issues too, like observing people. It might be the case that you've got your eye on the reels sitting across from a friend at a cafe, having a conversation, and yet you can't maintain focus on just that one thing. Because that's obviously what I'm seeing as well, particularly with teenagers. But then, to be honest, adults now too, is this inability to do one thing. So we're watching a show and we're scrolling and we've got the laptop open. And I see that in social situations that people find it sometimes very difficult. You know, in our lunchroom, having lunch as a team of psychologists, having our break. I mean, we're all talking and we're scrolling at the same time, and we've got the laptop on an email, and that kind of, it's almost like things aren't enough for us.
Yes.
Is that dopamine?
Yeah. And you know what? And I'm keen to hear your thoughts on this as well. I think about our capacity to be bored and the idea of frustration tolerance is maybe less than what it was before technology infiltrated our lives like it did.
So much less.
I remember the days where like my parents would go to dinner with their friends and I'd sit at the table and I had no device because it was before phones and iPads and stuff. And I'd sit at that table really bored and I'd like rip up the napkin into little pieces and then I'd chuck it in the glass and stir it around with some salt. Like you'd find ways to entertain yourself because you were bored. That we don't have that these days. No. Like that ability for us to build that frustration tolerance isn't what it was.
I think, the boredom tolerance is all but gone. I wouldn't even say it's just decreased. I mean, kids these days cannot be bored. They absolutely need to be entertained by an adult or have a screen. And similarly, I remember growing up, you just wouldn't dare go and tell your parents you were bored because, okay, well, I'll give you a chore to do. Like you actually make yourself scarce. Like you're out of there outside playing and trying to act like you're busy and not free because mum will give you like unpack the dishwasher kind of job or something. So you just wouldn't tell your parents you were bored. They just look at you like, well, that's your problem. Like figure that out.
And I don't remember the last time I was bored, and because there's always a way for me to find that I can entertain myself. Yeah. It's either like I can be busy, but also if I'm not busy, I can find entertainment so easily.
But that's a problem in our development, I think. and we could go all directions with this, but I think one of the biggest casualties and I don't know whether this has been mapped cognitively or in a neuroscientific way, but by my observations, one of the biggest casualties of technology for me at the moment is everyone's inability to stay with a topic or think deeply about a topic because everything is sound bites. Everything is 24-hour news cycle, less than 24-hour news cycle, actually, hour by hour news cycle. And this ability to read books, like a long form, and get into something and stay with a topic for an extended amount of time has absolutely decreased. And I know that they've tracked this over the last few decades since Twitter, now X, came about, and they looked at how long topics stayed trending.
Oh, okay.
You know, for how long. And when Twitter first came along, and I think it was like one topic a trend for a few days. And of course, that has just decreased. And now it's like almost minutes. It's almost, 30 minutes, 15 minutes, worldwide topic trending. And then it goes.
Wow.
And then it's the next thing. And just looking at that trend, I think really reflects this inability for people to just think about something in a less than shallow way than we do
headlines
at the moment. Let's get back to dopamine. Yeah. I want to talk about, and I don't know whether this is related or not, but I want to talk about this term that some psychologists use, but I think it's very much out there in social media, of functional freeze. And I hear my friends and a lot of middle-aged women talk to me about this state that they get into where they feel quite numbed out. They might think that they are trying to rest by scrolling on the couch, and whether they're scrolling or not, they end up just kind of sitting there in, this kind of freeze moment, which is quite kind of emotionally flat and almost this kind of shutdown response. And I don't know whether that's from is there such thing as a flooding of dopamine? Is there such thing as too much? Is this all related? What's this loop about?
Yeah, it can be definitely dopamine related, especially when you're talking about using devices to try and rest and relax. It's like the dopamine activation we get, it's like small but constant hits from social media. Like social media is not going to activate dopamine in the same way that winning the jackpot at the pokies will, right? It's not that massive kind of rush and flood, but that'd
be kind of weird.
Yeah.
If you were that excited.
It may be
that's a good reel.
And share that one. But like it's the small, more constant kind of activation of dopamine, which keeps us in this state of actually not being very rested. Like when we've got dopamine being activated, we're not rested, we're slightly excited, we're seeking something, we're thinking about things. It's a very different state to going back to what you're saying about reading books. That's something you can immerse yourself into quite deeply and sort of get into that calmer state of being.
Yeah. And I guess having that constant drip of dopamine now through our modern lives is not evolutionary. Like this is not a natural state for us to be in.
No.
We would be in more rested states for prolonged periods and then have kind of dopamine chasing and dopamine reward and then back to rest state. And so maybe we're not getting that modulation of states.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So talk to me about what I'm seeing on my algorithms, or most people out there will have heard about, you mentioned it, dopamine detoxes and things like that. So is this just hocus pocus, woo-woo stuff? Is there such thing as dopamine flooding and then we need to detox and then we need, what's all that about? Because there's just so much out there and influencers and blogs telling us they're selling programs of like dopamine detox 30-day programs.
Yes.
What is this?
Yes. So I think the dopamine detox has good intentions behind it. How it's delivered and executed, I'm not always on board with. Dopamine detoxes, they started off as this idea that you could just stop everything in your life that gave you enjoyment and pleasure. And now that could be scrolling on TikTok, but it might also be listening to music. It might also be eating food that you just like the taste of, right? It could be even exercise, right? Exercise can activate dopamine. So there's healthy and unhealthy ways to get dopamine activated. But it was this idea that you just like stop it all. And usually
it doesn't sound fun.
No, it doesn't at all. I wouldn't want to do that. And you stop it and that your body will kind of reset its baseline. Now, Usually these dopamine detox kind of ads and programs advertise doing that for a very short period of time. Sometimes it's like 24 hours. We've seen these people from Silicon Valley do these 24-hour dopamine detoxes, lock yourself in a room, don't do anything fun. That's probably not going to really achieve very much in the long run. You'll feel pretty crappy for 24 hours. It'll be some sort of test of willpower. Great. But in terms of resetting dopamine baseline levels, it's not going to really do much. We need constant change over a longer period of time to sort of try and reset baselines.
Actually, yeah, just saying that, I actually did see some ad, again, on my algorithm, something, what was that? Something you could sign up to recently that was like you went there for a weekend and all you had was a pen, a notebook, a book and a bed or something like that. And it was like one of those silent retreats. But they definitely marketed that as if you're addicted to scrolling, if you're addicted to dopamine, you need to come and do this weekend in silence. I mean, I thought not talking to anyone actually sounded quite appealing for 48 hours. But yeah, so that's not necessary or the way to go.
It's not the way to go. I think there's good things can come from like taking ourselves away from stimulation for a day or two, sure. Like we can do creative pursuits and we can do some of that pen and paper journaling or whatever it might be, right? Like some good can come from that, but it's not going to be that when you come out the end of that, you're suddenly not wanting to pick up your phone and open Instagram. Like that's just an unrealistic expectation to have.
Yeah. Okay. So what can we do practically? Because the way I see it, we've got natural hits of dopamine that have always been there. And you said things like exercise or eating foods we like, listening to music. Then we've got these other forms, mostly technology and scrolling that I'm referring to. And if we're worried about, I just can't get through now an hour of my day without checking, without scrolling, is it just a matter of trying to not and replace it with something else? Or what are the practical steps people should start looking at?
So practical steps, taking a twofold approach to this. So it's like on the one hand, we do have to work and put things in place to reduce the behavior. So if it's scrolling, how can I put some barriers and some steps in place to reduce that? But like with anything that we're hooked on, we can reduce it for a period of time, but we've got to replace it with something. Otherwise, we're just kind of white knuckling it and then we'll just go back to what we were doing before. So we reduce the things we want to see less of, but we've got to increase values-based behaviors. So the research tells us that when we're living life aligned with values, we feel more content and satisfied in our life, right? And some of those can be dopamine activating behaviors as well. But if we're doing things that are aligned with values, we're also buffering ourselves to these more dopamine driven behaviors as well. So we've got to kind of take this twofold approach to it.
So just to explain to people, what do you mean by values? I mean, do you mean goals they have in their life or just other kind of broad concepts that are important to them?
Yes. So values are those ideals that are most important to us. So think things like family, friends, religion, culture, career, honesty, creativity, adventure. There's so many different values that we can have. Values are different to goals in that goals we can practically set ourselves a task and tick it off the to-do list. Values, we don't ever really tick them off. I don't go, yep, family, I've done that thing, on to the next one, right? So rather a value can help me set goals that are really meaningful to me.
Okay, so you need to spend some time, maybe if people haven't done that, thinking about what your values are, which may lead on to some goals for you, whether it be for your family or yourself spiritually or your career. Your values may inform those goals. Just explain again then the intersection then to stopping scrolling with that.
Yes, exactly. So if one of my values, say, is creativity, right? I might go, creativity is really important to me, but actually I'm not spending any time in my week doing anything creative. I spend hours a day scrolling social media, but I don't spend any hours a day doing anything creative. So I've got this mismatch between what dopamine's driving me to do and what my values are telling me to do. So as I make steps to reduce the Instagram scrolling, maybe I uninstall the app for the day, maybe I put some blocks on my phone, maybe I limit how much I look at it for. When I reduce the scrolling, I'm going to make the conscious decision to pick some things that align with that creative value and do those. So maybe I'm like, oh, you know what? Singing lessons sound like a good idea. Or I'm going to get the paint brushes out and start painting again, right? So it's reducing the scrolling and increasing the values-based activities.
Well, so I think that's such a that just really resonates, that part of the frustration that I hear from other adult women, I say women because that's who I'm talking to as my friends, part of the frustration as they go into that freeze scrolling on the couch is, I don't even want to be doing this. That's the ridiculous thing, is they say, Claire, I don't even, like, I used to crochet, or I used to make things, or I used to go out more, or I used to dance, or and I just don't do that now.
Yes.
And it's not that I don't want to, so why am I doing this? And that's when you kind of do question, is this just an unhealthy addiction? Because when you get to the stage where you're spending, and you look at your phone time, and it's like, you know, your 4 hours a day adds up to what, over a year? I mean, that's just crazy.
Yeah.
And you think, oh, well, I don't have time to pursue my hobbies anymore. Well, if you add up that scrolling time, but I think that's what causes the frustration and then deflation and just this, like, what's wrong with me? I think there's I don't know, the friends I talk to get a bit kind of like, oh, what's wrong with me? And then I think we all share it because we're all like, oh, we're all doing it. Yeah. It's normal. It's okay.
It's quick and it's easy. The phone's always there. It's in our pocket. It's in our bag. It's always there. It's always accessible. There's always something we can pick up and look at, right? It's quick and it's easy. And so we've got to make the crocheting or the painting or the dancing or whatever it is also relatively quick and easy to access as well.
Yes, and then there's practical things that you can do.
Yeah, it takes a bit of planning and scaffolding, like setting up those values-based activities. It might mean like getting the crochet equipment out and having it next to the couch so that when you are watching TV and you feel like scrolling, you can put the phone down after a few minutes of scrolling and pick up the crocheting instead, or you've got the paints there or something like that. So we've got to set things up to be accessible.
And do you recommend having a look at, you mentioned before, like there's apps that freeze other apps on there. There's lockable cages for phones these days, all of those things. Like there's things there that you can self-impose boundaries with. I saw one the other day advertise that you install this app and then you had to do like 20 push-ups to get access to Instagram. And you had to go through and you had to film it and the app recognized you doing it. Yeah. You'd set the phone up in front of you, and to be able to open Instagram, you had to be doing 20 push-ups and then Instagram would open.
I kind of don't mind that, right? Like you're putting in some sort of effort to get the reward. And that's what dopamine was, like from that evolutionary perspective. You put in effort, you got the reward. Now we don't need the effort. We just get the reward.
Yeah.
So I don't mind that.
Yeah.
But I think sometimes for people, it does feel too hard to just try and limit themselves. So using those practical strategies, the apps, the boxes, I used to sometimes even on my laptop, like just turn off the Wi-Fi if I was just trying to write something that I didn't need internet for, or that I could research some bits later. I'd just turn off the Wi-Fi because I'd automatically just open a tab on the internet, I don't know, Facebook or whatever I was going to look at, YouTube or something. And just that momentary like, Wi-Fi's off was enough to be like, I'm not meant to be doing that thing. Go back to writing. So there are little strategies, I sometimes put my phone on flight mode, these kinds of things, because I will inevitably pick it up and open it and go to open the apps. But that moment of like, nah, you're off, remember? I'm like, oh, yeah, okay. And that's enough for me to put it back down and just keep doing what I'm meant to be doing.
Because I think it's something like when you're concentrating on one task, if you're writing or working on a laptop, and you momentarily turn your attention to a notification and open up a new window just to momentarily look at something else, it takes like 15 to 20 minutes to get back into that deep level of concentration that you were in.
Yes.
And then that's where we're at. Our mind is constantly filtering these days between multiple tabs and basically multiple things.
Yeah.
So there are things that you can put in place that will try to just by sheer force keep you on one thing. And of course, you run a clinic where you see adults and families as well. And it is harder than, it's one thing regulating your own behaviour, but when you've got kids and teenagers to try and explain this stuff to them, when I see, and I say kids, but I mean teenagers as well, And parents come into me, how much phone use is too much? And I go through, like you said, like, is it causing any problems? One of the gender differences I guess I see typically is that when boys come off devices, and often boys are on gaming and other things as well, and are forcibly removed, they get quite aggressive. So they're externalizing and getting quite aggressive. Girls, I see go into this fog. If they're there scrolling on their phone and they're doing different things to boys, and they're usually on the Instagrams and with friends and chatting, and then their phone is forcibly removed for a while, parents will describe for me they are like in this weird zombie state walking around where I have to kind of go, hello, like snap out of it. And then that kind of dies down after an hour or two and they kind of re-emerge back into reality. And so one of the questions I ask parents is, when they ask me how much is too much, is not necessarily what they're doing on the device, but how are they when they get off it?
Yeah.
Because it really changes people emotionally and behaviourally afterwards.
Yeah.
And so I guess, your advice to parents out there struggling with this.
Well, we know that people can have withdrawals from behavioural addictions, whatever it might be. And so you see those outbursts or that sort of like fogginess as maybe part of this kind of experience of a withdrawal of something that was previously activating pathways in the brain.
Yeah, and that's scary, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that's when you really are. I have no hesitation calling that an addiction neurologically.
Yes.
Particularly too when parents describe for me, and I've witnessed it, children who change personality, who will lie and cheat and manipulate to get access to a device. It's like, I've hidden the device, but they lied, they snuck out at night, they grabbed it out of the other room. Like and that's not them. Like they're not that type of person. I'm like, we're really talking about addict behaviour now.
100%. That's exactly what I was going to say. That's what you see with like an adult who's got a drug or alcohol addiction who will go to all lengths of the earth to just find a way to access it.
And I can't help but think, if you're at that stage as a parent and you've got a kid who otherwise has been a sweet 10-year-old who is now becoming violent, lying, cheating, stealing, manipulating to get an iPad, we really need to consider getting rid of the iPad.
Yeah.
I don't know whether you agree. I just think that's at that point a little bit beyond putting in time controls.
Yeah.
And you have to stand back as a parent and go, I'm just keep handing them small doses of the drug each day. I just don't think that's the answer.
Well, often it is. Like when we've got a big problem, we need a big intervention and a real sort of shift by taking away the iPad, not having access to it, and rebuilding the rest of life. What does life beyond the iPad actually look like?
Really dull and boring to some kids. When they're on that dopamine cycle. And that's it, isn't it? It's like I touch things, they light up, they make sounds, there's colours, there's reinforcement. And then I turn that off and the real world's just a bit dull.
Yeah.
And can that be corrected after a while of non-use? That I can go outside and get a natural dopamine hit from playing outside again. Because a lot of kids now can't.
Yeah.
And that is a real, withdrawal and addiction reset.
Absolutely. Because nothing will feel quite as exciting or immersive as the lure of social media and games and things like that. But yeah, life is boring sometimes. Life is a bit dull. It is, but it can also be really wonderful. And to have kids experience the full spectrum of those things is really important.
Do you think it'll ever be cool not to have an iPhone or a smartphone? You know how there was a few articles the last few years, and I think they've kind of died away now, where I remember a few, the uber cool people in New York, the youth of kind of New York City, had a dumb phone, flip phone during the week, and they were doing this whole like restricting themselves, and it's cool to be switched off. I don't know, maybe that was a period of people trying that for a month or two, and then they just gave in and went back to the smartphone. It was
exciting for a short period of time because people were maybe curious and interested in asking them about it.
Maybe they got the
some
attention.
Sort of other dopamine related hit from doing it. Yeah. And then it got boring.
They were on the front page of the New York Times and then that was it. We went back to the smartphone. Is it here to stay? Will humanity ever actually reject it?
Gosh, I hope so to some degree.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm all for the pros of social media and technology, but we really need regulation, right? It's very hard for individuals themselves to put these regulations. Dopamine acts on a level that's unconscious. We're not aware it's happening, right? But we can change things by regulating the companies who are creating these apps. They know the data, they know the algorithms. There are lots of sneaky ways of doing things. So if more regulations can be put on them, then we maybe have some hope.
Do you think the government should ban kids off social media?
Oh, you're asking the juicy questions. I'm not against it. Yeah. I think it'll be a hard transition. But if I think about kids who just weren't on it, I didn't get social media until I was sort of like later, I can't even remember, later in teens, 20, something like that. But like when everyone wasn't on it, when it wasn't the thing to be on, if everyone's outside playing footy instead of on their phones, it's fine. But I know you've talked about this, like collectively getting families and parents and kids on board as a community.
Yes. Yeah. And my stance, a little bit like your reaction, is I've surprisingly to some been a little bit on the fence with it, but that is only because I feel slightly uncomfortable with the government legislating things that I think is a parent's decision. So should this be against the law? Is that the government? It's a whole question of what our government's role is in this, in our lives as the big brother kind of government there. But beyond that, do I want every single person under the age of 16 off social media? Absolutely, 100% yes. And if we can do that without legislation, and I believe we could if we collectively decide tomorrow, because the thing is with social media is that no parent hands their year 7, 12-year-old the phone happily. They don't go, here you go. Every single one goes, I have to because all their friends have it.
Yeah, they've delayed as long as they can and then they feel the pressure to do it.
They're and that's how they communicate and that's how they message. And I'm not going to leave my child ostracized and fair enough. And so but I've always said, if you put in the WhatsApp group and said, I'm meeting at this cafe tomorrow, any parent who doesn't want their 12-year-old on social media, come and meet with me. And you could look at your child and say, no, you're not the only one. I know at least half a dozen others, that also are. So that's how it should start. But of course, we haven't been able to do that, and certainly not on a mass scale. And the effects of I would go further and just say smartphones in general for kids. I don't see any net positives myself. I think it's all negative for kids. And so it will be interesting times because that legislation is due to come in at the end of this year, and we will see whether parents of 14-year-olds who already have it are going to say, you have to now take it off them. And how is that going to work?
I feel for the parents that are going to have to navigate that, honestly. For the kids who are on it and are going to have to get off it, it's
going to be hard. Yeah. Okay, look, to wrap up this, I want to know, is there one thing that you wish people understood about dopamine and modern life? Is there a myth or is there a misconception out there? Or if people could just take one thing from this conversation, what would it be?
I'd say this. Dopamine is neither good nor bad. It's chemical in the brain. It serves a function. It's how we get dopamine activated that can be problematic. We can get it activated through music, through exercise, through hanging out with friends, through achieving something, all really healthy, lovely ways. Nothing wrong with that. It's when we get it through social media, through gambling, through pornography, through online shopping, through technology that is harmful for us.
I think you need to come back and talk about online shopping. Didn't even go there. My goodness. Okay. Where can listeners learn more about your work and what's coming up for you?
Oh, well, the book dives into this. If you're into long form, you can read the book. There's the audio book. It's on ebook as well.
The Dopamine Brain.
The Dopamine Brain. That's it. But otherwise, just more teaching at uni, more seeing clients in the clinic, and who knows, maybe another book in the future.
Yay. Thank you so much, Anastasia, for joining us. It's been great. We'll have to have you back.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for giving up your valuable time and joining me today on the couch. If today's conversation spoke to you, consider sharing the love and send it to someone you know who needs to hear it. Don't forget you can watch this full episode on my YouTube channel. And if you've enjoyed today's conversation, all I ask is that you hit that subscribe button. It helps us to be able to deliver bigger and better content to you absolutely free of charge. If you've got comments or questions about today's episode, head on over and come hang out on Instagram where you can follow and contact me. Okay, stay curious, stay connected, and join me next time on the couch. Take care. Okay, for those who've made it this far, just remember, even though I am actually a registered and qualified psychologist, this podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only and should not be considered professional individual advice.